endangered species. It's not good. And there is also evidence that it's poaching as well. The trade in animal parts is a big problem, a big reason for decline. Climate change is being discussed in this seminar. Climate change has affected species. And alien species or introduced species, another reason for the decline of species that are native to a country. And pollution, the last one. So before we can come up with action to help these species, we have to have some scientific background. And one area that has been very active recently is to do DNA studies to confirm that a species is in fact different from another species. And there are, I'm sure, many DNA studies being done in Japan, and China, and elsewhere, certainly in Canada. And this is an example of a team in Canada that is looking at the genomes of a number of species, especially species that are declining in numbers. So we have to have a starting point. We have to know how many species we have in our countries. So in Canada, there are approximately 70,000 species of plants and animals. That I'm sure is a low estimate because there are types of animals that are not studied very much. Okay, so we can't protect everything. So the question that conservationists ask is, what can we protect? What are our priorities? Priorities for species conservation is one. Priorities for habitat conservation is another. So let's look at priorities for species conservation. If you have any questions as we go through this, please put up your hand or interrupt. Feel free to do that. So many scientists have been studying endangered species. Here's an example from Hokkaido. I spent a year in Hokkaido, as was mentioned, and I went looking for this animal, Shima fukuro, in eastern Hokkaido, in the wild, and I didn't see one. I couldn't find one. They are there, but there's less than 100 of them in Hokkaido. So I had to settle. This is the picture I took in the rehabilitation center. But this bird would never fly outside again. It's injured. In Canada, we have similar kinds of birds, owls, that their numbers are decreasing, primarily because of all the forest that has been cut down. These kinds of birds are very dependent upon forests. And in one case, there are less than 20 in Canada. There are less than 20 birds left. That means 10 pairs of birds. So the question that people are asking is, for endangered species where it's almost certain that the species will go extinct, should we spend time and money studying these animals? Some people are now saying, in cases like this, we have to abandon those animals and maybe spend the money on protecting habitats rather than individual species. So this is a controversial topic, and one that I haven't solved in my own mind yet. If we look at how many species are endangered, in Canada, according to Canadian statistics, more than 500. In Japan, where studies are probably more comprehensive than in Canada, more than 2,000, almost 3,000 according to the Japan Range Data Book, are said to be endangered. The reason for the difference is that Japan is an archipelago that goes north-south, roughly north-south, whereas Canada goes east-west. So if you look at Japan, it goes from Hokkaido down to Okinawa, so a latitudinal range. Hence, the greater number of endangered species, and many reasons for that. Another strategy is to look at endemic species. An endemic species is one that is only found in a particular location. So there are species, like salamanders there, are examples of species that are only found in Japan. And there are many examples of those. Some of these may be endangered, some may not be endangered. But they're unique to Japan. The Galapagos Islands has many endemic species, many species that are only found in the Galapagos. Another strategy is to look at animals that migrate. So birds, for example, that cross borders, that in this case, whooping crane crosses from Canada to the United States twice a year. In the spring, the birds go to Canada, and in the fall, they go back to the United States. So that means that two countries, in that case, have an obligation to protect these animals, and that, like tansho in Hokkaido, these animals almost went extinct. The numbers are still not very good, maybe 200, 300. Still, they have to be protected. So internationally important species. Here's an example of a species, at least in Canada, the numbers are decreasing rapidly. This is, in Japan, is higuma, which is only found in Hokkaido. And in North America, the same species is found. It is, the largest numbers are in Alaska. And then we have a smaller number in British Columbia, where I come from. And very few in the other United States. So this bear is their numbers are decreasing for various reasons. One is food. The food supply is decreasing. Also, they're hunted and their habitats are affected. The Convention on Biodiversity expects people to look at genetic diversity. And one of the big weaknesses of the Convention on Biodiversity is that so far not much has been done about genetic resources, protecting genetic resources. Here's a simple example of a genetically important population from Canada. These are not polar bears, but these are a white form of the American bear. It's a simple recessive mutation that causes this white color, white variant.